Let's play.
All right, we got
So yeah.
playing around with
Let's play.
What's up, everybody? Today on Nerd Talk, we have Carlos, who is better known as Rendeza on Instagram, and he joins us today to have a little nerd discussion. So why don't you just kick us off? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah. So as Kyle said, I'm Rendeza. I'm a big fan of many things and have a lot of interests. I have an Instagram page that I did a lot of Star Wars memes and a lot of Star Wars content, but recently I've kind of shifted directions into something more real life and grounded. But that doesn't mean I've stopped being a nerd or making nerdy things, especially about Star Wars. So I've started a new YouTube channel where I can talk more freely and openly about all that stuff and not be constrained to 60 or 90-second videos. So I can yap for an hour about Star Wars as much as my heart desires.
Yeah, you can talk as long as you want about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did. I have, like, the first video I put up was like an hour long. So I was like, yep, can't do that on Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah,
So
we'll put a link in the description to that video. So
I appreciate it.
So the other thing there too, like you said, right? Like, so you have 90 seconds or even 60 seconds of reels to kind of like sit there and talk about stuff. But you said something really cool there too, right? You said like talking about something deep, and sometimes Star Wars and all these stories, they get really deep. But when you're talking about something deep, right, you mean something kind of personal, even to you. But a lot of that same stuff, kind of everybody goes through, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff ties into nerd stuff. So, what made you want to start diving deep? Because it's a pretty deep thing. Pun intended.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess to kind of verge off the nerd stuff a little bit, I went through something after high school that really impacted me, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my next 10 years. So instead of like starting the rest of my life after high school, right, I went through like this 10-year long journey of like healing and growth and self-discovery. And so now it feels like I'm starting the rest of my life now, since I've been able to like process and learn so much about myself and what I actually want. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the story I wanted to share with this new direction that I'm going in. But since I'm such a big nerd and I love Star Wars and like Lord of the Rings and all these other things, I still wanted to talk about that. So I try to find a way to fuse that in this new series, and I think I kind of did. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's I wanted to make something that people could connect to and relate with, especially with just the state of social media where there's so much superficial and it's more showy than it is authentic. And I just wanted to bring something authentic for people.
There's so much
to connect with.
That's awesome. There's so much social media. I think that people don't realize how scripted it really is. I think they're starting to, but like in the beginning, they didn't really know how scripted, it really is and can be for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting the stuff that's raw and pure and real, man, that's the good stuff, right? And that's kind of what we're doing here, just having a real raw conversation. So
absolutely.
All right. So I guess being a nerd, since we are on Nerd Talk, we can talk about nerd things. We can dive deep into some personal stuff too. I mean, I've same as you, gone through lots of different various things and done some really good personal work. It's not easy. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's not easy. It's very hard.
Yeah.
The hardest person to help is yourself.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
But let's talk about like when did you become a nerd and what did you get into first, and then kind of like where'd it go from there?
Yeah. Man, I think I've been a nerd like all of my life. The first like gaming system I got was a gift from my mom's cousin, who was like loaded at the time and we weren't. And she was like, "Oh yeah, here's like my old Super Nintendo and Game Boy and like some good games." I had Link's Awakening and Super Mario Brothers, I think it was.
Yep.
And so that was like my first gaming experience. And then fast forward a few years later, I'm at my friend's house. He has an Xbox. He shows me Halo, and that like changed my world. So Yeah, that was really, I think, the jump into that journey of like gaming and being a nerd.
Okay, so
And
this is
then of
pretty cool.
course,
This is pretty cool.
yeah,
Halo got you into it
yeah, um, yeah, for gaming for sure.
for gaming.
But
Okay.
then like outside of that, my dad, I mean, he showed me Star Wars. I've been watching Star Wars since I was like 5. And then of course he showed me all the heroes that he grew up with, like Spider Man, Superman, Batman. You know, the classics.
Yep.
Uh, but like as far as I think that my time in school, I feel like I was probably more of a casual nerd. I was into like, I mean, Star Wars, superheroes, stuff like that. But when it came to gaming, I was really into more of like the shooters, racing games, uh, Madden, and NCAA football. But I feel like it wasn't until after high school where I really started to get into, like a deeper level of just absorbing as much as I can. But I think it also started with Skyrim in
Oh,
high school.
that's a good
That
one.
was my first RPG. That was my
Yeah,
first RPG experience, and it was just all downhill from there.
that's
Really.
that's prime Bethesda right there.
Yeah,
That's some
dude. I
prime
was.
Bethesda right there.
I remember my friend. So my childhood best friend that showed me Halo. His cousin is best friends with my brother, and so he was at the house after school one day, and he showed me Skyrim, and I was just like, man, it was. I'll never forget it, man. That first, that opening sequence,
Mm-hmm.
seeing Alduin come down, I'm like, holy crap, it's like giant black dragon. And then to
So
see that
good.
I can interact with so many things, I'm like, I can pick up salt.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you can cook in this
You
game. And I'm
can
like,
you
you
can
can
go chop
cook?
yeah, you can go chop wood and make planks out of
Yeah.
it. What?
It was like,
Like,
it blew my
yeah.
mind that this was possible in a video game. And that, like, it changed my world, man. It was crazy. And
It's funny you mentioned that because last night I was actually sitting here contemplating whether or not um, I wanted to play Skyrim on my Switch because now it's on Switch, and
oh
apparently
yeah.
it has some interactivity with the Joy Cons or whatever.
Oh cool.
And so I was like, oh, maybe I should play this. But it's funny you mentioned that because Skyrim for me too is a pretty big deal. I mean, we had played Oblivion before that, right? Like Elder Scrolls,
Hmm.
and stuff, right? But Skyrim soundtrack, oh my gosh,
It's
it's
so
just
good, man.
oh, it's so good. Like when that main theme hits, you're just like you're ready to just want to go.
Yeah.
And the way that it just had like you said, the crafting and all the details and stuff, man. Yeah, you just hit on two big things for me personally is Halo and Skyrim, dude. Whew,
Yeah.
so good.
Dude,
Um,
it's crazy. I was thinking about it. I was like, I was a junior in high school when this came out,
oh yeah,
right? And I started
I was
playing
not
it.
I was not in high school when it came out. So,
You weren't? It's crazy though, because I was like, I just turned 30 and
yeah,
Elder Scrolls 6 hasn't released. It's been that long. And I'm just like,
right,
oh yeah,
right. So
it's
because
just it's insane.
everybody keeps talking about like oh we got such and such before GTA 6, right? Some
Yeah,
of us are also going we got such and such before Elder Scrolls 6. We're all sitting there
exactly.
going like come on man like
Yeah,
where's the Elder Scrolls? Now they did come out but that's the defense they did release the Elder Scrolls Online,
they
um,
did.
and I tried that but it just wasn't the same,
Yeah.
it wasn't the same. It could have been cool. It's kind of like KOTOR Online, right? It could have been
Hmm.
amazing, but there was just something missing. So you got in. You were a nerd. Your dad introduced you to Star Wars. You got into video games through other people. That's
Hmm.
cool. You got a big, obviously, probably a big family, kind of like me too.
Yeah.
You get into stuff with cousins and friends and stuff too, right? Your
Oh
cousins
yeah.
become your friends, and your friends are your cousins.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, once you get out of high school, you said you just dove into it even more. And then what did it mean to you to kind of have this kind of like connection, to this kind of stuff? Was it just new? Like, was it just fun?
Yeah. Man, I think I was just drawn to the worlds at first, and more so the cool factor of it all.
Yeah.
But as I've like gotten older, I started to appreciate more the creative aspect of it all, and the storytelling especially. I fell in love with like the overarching story of Star Wars and the fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. Stories like Lord of the Rings, especially with the Two Towers, um, the monologue by Sam with like just that like speech of hope,
Yep.
and just things like that, and very human moments, honestly. within all these different worlds.
Well, like you just
I
said,
think
but,
that's
raw and pure, right? So,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it's like moments like that that have really, I think, lent me to draw more into that. And I think just wanting to absorb as much as I can from all these different worlds. Like I just bought my first Magic deck this year,
oh
and
yeah,
I
I
wasn't
think we
into that
talked
like
about
at
that.
all.
I
Yeah,
think we talked. So I hadn't bought one either, and then the Lord of the Rings Magic, the Gathering cards came out, and I
right.
bought every pack and a few
Yeah,
packs and a few of the boosters and all these things. And so yeah,
yeah.
I have a stack somewhere. And I think what are you doing? Assassin's Creed, right?
So I do have Assassin's Creed.
I
I
got Fallout
also
too. Yeah, dang it.
I didn't get Fallout, but I got the Mordor Commander deck,
Oh, nice.
and
That
I'm
one's
looking
cool.
to get some more, hopefully soon here.
That one has like the foul beast on it in the front, I think, right? Or does it have Sauron?
Um,
I think it has Sauron on the cover too. It's pretty cool.
I think. Let me see.
Oh, you have it right there. Look, see,
Yeah, I have it right
this is
here.
how you
Yeah,
know. This is how you know it's legit. Carlos can just reach behind him and just grab it. So it's right there. Yeah, there
yeah.
it is. Oh yeah,
This is. I don't
so
know if
good.
you can see it well. Here's Saruman. I know the lighting isn't like the greatest. And then here's This was on
Yeah,
the front, I think.
those
Sauron.
the illustrations are so good. Like sometimes you just want
Yeah.
to like stare at the cards. Their artists are so great. And sometimes like they'll
Yeah.
travel to shows like conventions and stuff, and they'll bring the artists with them and they'll like do art while there, and they'll sign
Oh,
art
cool.
cards. It's pretty cool. Um, so I guess now that you're into all of it, and you said like you found these pure moments, and you spoke right to me too, because like my top two is Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. With Lord of the Rings probably being
Nice.
the top, and what got me in
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was the movies, right?
Hmm.
I wasn't really a book reader, but so did you read any of the books? And then did you read any books, or have you gotten into like any kind of lore books? And what is the quintessential question? I guess is what is your favorite out of everything that you nerd out about?
Ooh. Okay. I'll start with the books.
Okay.
I too am not much of a reader, but I it's like I have this, I guess, toxic relationship where I'm like, oh, I'll read that, yeah, for sure, and I have like amassed a collection of books
I don't think you're
that I
alone in
haven't
that.
really
I don't.
read
I
any
don't
of them.
think you're alone in that one.
No, yeah. So it's like I buy books with the desire to read them without actually acting on that
Yeah.
desire. But I do have the Lord of the Rings books. I have most of the Game of Thrones books. I have a ton of Star Wars books. Uh, I've even ventured kind of off those big IPs, and I bought this book called The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which I
Ooh.
think if you're a fantasy reader, you'd be very familiar with that book. That one I did actually read. I got through most of it. I started it in 2020, and I've yet to finish it. So
What?
if
What?
that's a testament to my reading,
But at
that
the same time, imagine that, right? You have
yeah,
Lord of the Rings, you have Star Wars books, you have all these books. But what was it about that book that made you pick it up and read it?
I've heard. Well, actually, I saw the cover when I was going through. I was at a trade store and I saw the cover and I was like, "Oh, this looks cool." And I kind of looked into it, and people were like, "Yeah, it's fantastic." Patrick is a great writer. There's two books right now out of I think three planned books, but he hasn't finished the third book. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I have time, to like catch up. And so I jumped into that book, and it is fantastic. His writing is exceptional, very like I wish I could write like him. But that was something that was held in such high regard. So that's what made
Awesome.
me, drew me into actually reading it.
All right, we got to look in that one because that sounds good.
Yeah,
Um. All right. So what's your favorite out of everything? Nerdum, all of your things that you're into.
yeah, Star Wars for sure.
Star Wars for sure.
Yeah,
Who is your favorite character in Star Wars?
Anakin, I think.
Anakin Skywalker. Is it
Yeah,
because of the arc from light to dark, kind of
I
thing?
think so. Yeah, and I think also honestly Hayden's portrayal of him. I know people kind of had their issues with Anakin in the prequels,
Well, did,
but
did did you grow up with the prequels?
I did.
Okay,
So I'm a bit biased there because I
right.
recognize their faults, but I love them to death. They're my
See, my
favorites.
my generation's kind of in that middle. where like
Mm-hmm.
we grew up where like our parents would have watched Star Wars, coming out in theaters, right? And then
Yeah.
like in the '90s, before I was in high school in 2000, so in the '90s they re-released the movies before the prequel started coming out.
Yeah.
So when episode one came out, I think I was starting high school, right? And obviously when you get in high school, it's like not the cool thing or whatever, right?
Right.
And so yeah, we always hit that kind of middle point where we were like right at high school, getting out of high school was when one, two, three came out, and then but then there was that generation that was like a little bit behind us that they were the kids when these prequels came out, and they've always liked Anakin all the time. And
Yeah.
when it first came out, and a lot of people gave Hayden some crap, like man, the acting's
Yeah.
terrible and the acting's this, but
Yeah.
he was just going off of what George was kind of giving him direction from,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then
Exactly.
now it's so cool to see all the love that like Hayden's getting and the
Dude,
prequels are
yeah.
getting, and you go back and watch it, and now it's just like man, Revenge of the Sith was like that was the shit, like
Yeah.
that was it.
It's awesome.
Um, well, that's cool. Did you ever get into Clone Wars? Because that was big.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
funnily enough, there was a period in my time where I started to fall off of Star Wars. And
Oh,
I think that was around the time that I was in high school. And I was just like,
did you,
yeah,
did
I
you,
kind
did you
of
feel like you were too old or something?
I think so. But I think I just also started losing interest. Like, and I grew up on like Battlefront, the Clone Wars game. I
Oh
played
yeah,
the Obi-Wan game when that came out.
yeah. The
So I
original
grew up on
Battlefront
stuff like
game
that.
was something special, man. It was different
Dude,
when it
yeah.
came out. The
Yeah.
capture
It was
points and stuff.
sick.
That's where Battlefield kind of Battlefield was doing that whole thing too. The capture points and like capture these areas. So
Yeah.
you felt like you felt like you went away from it or it went away from you.
I think I went away from it because at that point I didn't actually care about the Jedi or anything. All I cared about was the clones, and
Yeah,
so
they are pretty
the Clone
cool.
Wars came out, and I was like, "Oh, bet! Like I love this is exactly what I wanted."
Yeah,
And so I started watching the Clone Wars, but I didn't have cable TV, so it was kind of hard for me to keep up with it. But I think I watched like the first 3 seasons,
that's
and
cool.
then years later, when they were all released, I was able to finally catch up on them because they were on Netflix, I think.
Yeah,
And that's
I think they
where,
released the whole thing on Netflix because it was on Cartoon Network. Then it went to
yeah,
Netflix, and now it's on Disney Plus, where they did that final season, which was insane.
yeah,
Um, who's your favorite clone?
Jesse for sure.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's yeah, man, that's cool. I haven't
yeah,
heard a lot of people say Jesse, but that's awesome.
yeah. I
Why do
have
you
his
like
helmet.
Jesse? Why do you like Jesse?
I think that that final arc was just made me appreciate him so much because he was one of the last few 501st members that was there from the beginning, and then we see him now, unfortunately, fall as a villain, but of course, under the control of the chip. And I think that I just love that whole aspect of him that he was just this good soldier
Mm-hmm.
until the end, following orders, even though
Following orders.
he went down a villain, but. That moment, man, that last shot with like his helmet on the stake just really impacted me, and I loved it.
It's pretty strong, right? So
Yeah.
you really gravitate to those moments. So, um, give me a moment if you don't mind. Like I said,
Hmm.
we get deep here. It's not just about all the nerd stuff, but
Yeah, of course.
personal growth is a huge part mental health of everything, right? And especially for
Yeah.
nerds, sometimes I think we find that these worlds give us escapes or places, or maybe you're hyper creative. I think both of you and I are pretty creative people, and we love creating, writing stories.
Yeah.
What's one of the lower points in your life where you hit, and maybe some of this stuff actually helped you through it?
Oh man,
I know I went there.
that's yeah, that's man. Let me. I think there's been multiple points, especially in the last, I think, 2020 to 2022. I guess kind of like that COVID area, but I wouldn't say it was like directly from COVID, but just in my personal life where I was hitting a lot of lows. But Star Wars offered a great escape for me. Star Wars offered like this place that I could just kind of go to, especially Rebels. Honestly, um, Rebels
That,
is just like a series
that was a shock series.
that's
Yeah,
just yeah.
I was like,
It
wait, what?
was one that just I don't know, man. It was like a comfort show for me whenever I would have like low points. And I love like Clone Wars is my favorite,
Hmm.
but there's something about Rebels that's just I found a lot of comfort in, and I found something great to like escape in the stories that were being told there. And honestly, even the characters. I mean, the Ghost Crew. I love them. Kanan and Ezra and their relationship too. Is just something that really impacted me. So
Yeah,
I
they
think there
really
was
did
a
bring a good story in there. It really was a good like family unit.
yeah.
And Kanan, all those characters are actually really just cool characters. Zeb, Hera, Kanan, Ezra, like they're all like just really cool. Chopper was a cool droid.
Hmm.
So it just offered you comfort, right? Somewhere to escape from what was
Yeah,
going
yeah. I feel like I mean Rebels specifically, but I think Star Wars has always just kind of been a world that I could escape to and not like just drown out everything else that's going on in my life.
on. Yeah,
Any hurt that I was going through, any sort of like loneliness or like just I don't know bleak outlook of life that I had. Star Wars was always there for me to just zone in on and forget everything else.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to that, and because it's almost like home away from home, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
regardless of, I mean, we're not that far apart in age, to be honest, and so I think um, that's different for our generation. A lot of our people before us and older than us didn't really grow up with like, the video game escape or
Hmm.
the entertainment escape kind of thing. And I still play outside. I'm pretty sure you did too. Active imaginations outside
Yeah.
with sticks and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
thanks for sharing that. That's great. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Rebels definitely was a surprise. It was like, whoa, wait, this is actually good. This is cool. Um,
Yeah.
was there ever a video game that you could like at a low point like escape to or escape with?
Um,
What's your go-to comfort game?
man.
Right now,
Wow.
is it Starfield? Or right now?
No, not really Starfield. I'd say. I think if there were a game that I could just escape to, it would be Skyrim. Honestly, Skyrim. Um, I really enjoy the Assassin's Creed games, but I don't think I kind of rely on them as heavily as I would Skyrim.
Yeah,
Skyrim is just like the perfect escape.
that's good. So you would, so you kind of use both those, like, Rebels and Clone Wars and
Hmm.
Skyrim were kind of like your escape. That's cool. What's
Yeah.
your out of your lifetime, right?
Hmm.
Um, what's been the coolest moment, as a nerd, where, or like actually, wait, you know what? Let me backtrack real quick.
Yeah.
Um, you had mentioned about like, basically, going away from Star Wars. How long did you kind of go away, and when did you come back, and why?
Yeah. Honestly, it was just like a few years because actually it might have started around middle school. My memory's kind of fuzzy on it, but I think it was around middle school where I
Yeah, we're
kind of
getting we're
started.
getting older. Stuff fades out.
Yeah,
It's fine.
right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking the ballpark is like middle school,
Yeah,
but then the Clone Wars. I don't even remember when I jumped. I think I jumped into the Clone Wars in high school, and that's what drew me back in. Um, but then I wasn't as deep into Star Wars as I am now.
yeah.
Probably until I hit my 20s, honestly, and that's when I really started like going ham on it. And I got a bunch of books, going through the graphic novels, reading up on the lore, just like absorbing as much as I can from that universe.
Well, I see behind you. You also like collecting stuff, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Well,
absolutely yeah.
quite a
I
few
got
pops there, maybe.
yep. I got this is actually my Disney shelf right here.
Mm-hmm.
I have all of Pixar, Disney animated, Star Wars, MCU. That's all right here. It's just covered by pop figures. And then I've
Yep.
got pop figures just going across a bunch of different IPs. I think I've got some Marvel on here this shelf. This is Star
That's cool.
Wars. I've got Legolas, Peter Pan, Vito Corleone, and Batman on that shelf, and
You have like
Reptar's like right over here.
you're kind of like me. You have like a whole, like, various different universes and everything. I got
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings are actually some of the hardest to find. Oh my gosh! Like, and I have
yeah,
a bunch now. Probably just paid too much for some of them, but uh, so collecting, obviously, for nerds, for us, is something I think that happens, and it's not just everyone, right? And the reason
Hmm.
I told you this to everyone before, the reason it's called Nerd Top Shelf Nerds and Nerd Talk, whatever, is because everyone's a nerd. It's cool to like throw around that idea of like a geek, and everyone kind of like use that that term, like, oh, I'm a geek, I'm like a cooler nerd. So you're still a nerd
Right.
about something. Everyone nerds out about something, right? Some people
Absolutely.
nerd out about tennis shoes. Some people nerd out about TV shows. They nerd out about
Hmm.
whatever it is, but you're a nerd about something. So,
Yeah.
um, but with collecting and everything, what's your favorite collection piece that you have,
Ooh, man,
or
that's
your number one thing, or your favorite thing to collect?
that's tough. I've kind of leaned away from pop figures. I've got enough, more than enough, honestly. Although
Yeah.
there are maybe a couple that I'd still like to pick up. I did get into the sideshow of the hot toy figures,
Oh yeah.
so those are
For,
exorbitantly more expensive, but
a little
very
bit,
very cool. Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit, yeah, a little bit more
um,
expensive, but they are very, very, very cool.
yeah.
And then
It's
when you open
honestly,
up the Hot Toys, you're like, hang on a second, this is just a giant like Canon Barbie doll that's just like
pretty
hyper
much.
detailed, and you're like,
Yeah,
but it's so cool, and like the detail they get in their faces is just, it's insane what they do.
it's making the clones look more like Tamara Morrison than how they did in the animated series. It's just that's a skill right there. I think just
It
kind of
is.
bringing that to life.
Well, they also make the eyes kind of glossy too, so like they look real.
Yeah,
So the Hot Toys is your new favorite thing. It's just a little bit more exorbitant price.
yeah. I can't like go too crazy on it, but
Yeah.
those are my favorites.
Well,
I
and I
did
think
get
that's an interesting point though, because pops. That's why I think pops are so popular, is because they're so accessible, right?
oh yeah,
I mean, high toys are very popular. I mean, I have like 15, I think.
yeah.
They were always the thing I wanted to get into, and I could finally do it. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna buy some. But
Hmm.
I think pops are more popular because they're just so accessible. Now, some of them, you know, when they're limited, they're not as accessible and
Oh
more
yeah,
expensive than hot toys. But
yeah.
it's cool. So okay, I know you're a big gamer too. I am too.
Hmm.
Love video games. Um, obviously Halo. I mean, you hit on it with Halo and Skyrim with me, but
Yeah.
out of your entire life and video game journey,
Yeah.
I know Skyrim, you said, spoke to you quite a bit. What was your favorite era in video game? Like the favorite console. You could even today go back and grab it, plug it in, and then what game would you put in to just zone out and connect again with it?
Man, I love that question because I've talked about that with our mutual Real Rules quite
Hmm.
extensively. Just kind of going back on different console generations. I think the 360.
Mm,
I think just and I don't even know if that would be like my favorite generation,
yeah.
which might be a little controversial, but that that is where a lot of that started. I mean, I had the OG Xbox,
Yep.
but like I said, it was mostly shooters and racing. With the 360, I got into Assassin's Creed, I got into Skyrim, I got into the Batman Arkham games. I got into
Yeah, those were good.
I don't know what else I got, but those are like the big three, honestly.
Well,
Of course, Halo as well, and Call
yeah,
of Duty for
yeah,
me.
well, yeah, because Halo on the 360. I mean, you got Halo 3 on there, so and
Hmm.
Reach, uh,
Yeah,
and Halo 4. Actually, people forget Halo
yeah,
4 was 362. You had
yep.
three Halo games in that generation. Actually, wait, four, right? Because Halo Wars
ODST.
and ODST. So you had five
Yeah.
Halo games on that console.
Hmm.
It's crazy, But that 360 era was prime Xbox, man. You're right.
Hmm.
Um, so the one game you'd put in that 360 to play, one game,
Probably Brotherhood.
Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
Yep.
That's a good one, man. That's a
Yeah.
good one. That's your favorite.
Loved it.
That's your favorite Assassin's Creed game.
I would say so. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I liked 3 was pretty cool. The Revolutionary War and
Oh yeah.
Black Flag is just
Black Flag is. Oh my gosh.
Black
I
Flag.
can't. I hope the remake is great because I
Black
really want to
Flag.
dive into that
Black
again.
Flag is the best not a pirate game ever made. Like
Absolutely.
it's so good. Now, I will say, you got what's the rare game that came out? Sea of Thieves, right? that was pretty
Hmm.
cool. And then Skull and Bones was like hyped up for how many years, and then you know, so
Yeah.
but and that's another thing too. We could talk video games for a little bit. I mean, what's been your favorite, most recent video game to come out? Because a lot of people like really are giving some developers some pretty heavy hate, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
hey man, you're putting out some crap, and then you're updating it, and then and I get it, and I think the industry is shifting. We really kind of went through a, like you said, 360 generation, pretty much all the consoles, right? And
Hmm.
these modern games are kind of hitting this point of, to your point, unobtainable for some people to pay $100 for a game or $80 for a game, and then one of these services are always on, right?
Hmm.
And now we have people like saying that now you don't buy games and own them. That's like on a loan, right?
Right.
Um, which is really weird. And we could probably do a whole nother episode on just that alone, and we could discuss that maybe
Yeah.
as a group. We should probably do that.
Yeah.
But I think in the modern era of gaming, we have actually seen some pretty amazing stuff.
Hmm.
We've seen some pretty terrible stuff.
Yeah.
um, but in the modern era of gaming, let's just say, look, the last few years or whatever, what's been like the standout thing, either a singular game or story or like feature, whatever it is, like what's has stood out to you in the last few years in the gaming industry?
I think the rise of the indie games for sure. I've played a whole bunch. I'm huge into the AAA games,
Yeah,
Sony first party games, usually of quality. God of War, Last of Us, Horizon. I know that might be a little bit more mixed received, but I really enjoyed Horizon. Those, love those games. They're great. They're of great quality and they tell good stories. But I feel like with some of the other studios, like Ubisoft and even like Activision, just some of the games these studios pull out are just they don't hit the mark. And maybe they used to like back in the day, but
yeah,
games are released in a buggy state. Things are like just filled to the brim with microtransactions. They're trying to find every way they can to get money from you. And I get it, as you said, games are super expensive to make now, and they even take longer to make when it comes to more ambitious games like GTA 6, The Elder Scrolls 6, Starfield. But the indie games, I think, have been filling a hole in when it comes to gamers that the big studios haven't been able to. And
yeah,
that's affordable games that give you more than enough content to enjoy from them. So I
yep,
can play Valheim for like $15 and get hundreds of hours out of it alone, compared to maybe 100 hours in a $70 game. Same with maybe Pal World. That one didn't really draw me, but I know that was a huge one, and I think I don't remember the price point on that, but it was pretty reasonable.
it
Again,
was really reasonable
yeah,
game. But that's good, man. I think the indie game pieces come out, and there's also like, look at Space Marine 2, and you have some smaller studios that are getting picked up by
that too. Yeah.
publishers and stuff, and you go, wow. And I don't know if people think
Hmm.
people know this, by the way. Little tidbit: the majority of the developers in Space Marine 2 were Halo and Gears of War devs.
Ooh,
So that's
nice.
why that game is that good. And they just
Yeah.
went back old school because, I don't know if you know this too, but like 343 actively did not want to hire Bungie employees, and a lot of them started their own things.
Yeah.
And yeah, Space Marine 2, by the way, that's one of my. It's just been always been so good. There's been so many games though, but I'm here to interview you. There's so many things
Yeah.
here
No.
we could talk about. Um, all right, before we go, what I want to kind of do with every guest is also, you hit on the big part. This is why
Hmm.
I think we're becoming really good friends, because we're like minded. But
Yeah.
um, personal work is huge, and I think being a nerd in that space, it could be very dark.
Hmm.
Um, but if you want to leave, everyone, I'll let you close everything out. Um, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, please. I'll let you close us out with this question. If there's one piece of advice that you could give nerds out there, anyone out there who's struggling to
Hmm.
maybe find a place, and maybe, um, how what piece of advice would you give them, like from a nerd's perspective, and someone who's done that kind of personal work? What would you give them?
Man, that's tough, man. It's I think
Hey, we don't come on here to ask the easy questions, okay?
right. No, I love it though. I love it. I love the hard questions. Now, I think if you're really going through it, there's definitely communities out there that have good people, and so I would try to connect with other like-minded people that share the same interests as you, and never let anybody try to make you feel bad for liking something that you enjoy. I see that a lot. I saw that a lot with the prequels growing up, but it never swayed me from loving what I love. And just I think when you press into to allowing yourself to enjoy those things without worrying about what other people are saying, you have something you can kind of escape to, and I think that'll really help during the moments that are really tough and that you might not find much enjoyment in anywhere else. So connect with people and don't let others stop you from enjoying what you enjoy.
Awesome, dude. Couldn't say it better myself. And I think, yeah, remember to also find people that help you challenge yourself. That's always
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
But never lose sight of the of play. And that was really well said. So I think
Thank you.
on that note, this has been Carlos slash Rendeza on Instagram and YouTube, and we'll be probably doing some more stuff together. And I'll put a
Yeah,
link
look
to his
forward to it.
put
Yeah,
a link to his video down in the description. And
appreciate it.
until next time, this is Nerd Talk. See you guys.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Let's play.